Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Production channel here at YouTube, and welcome to another album of the week. This is episode number 174, and today's episode is a spotlight on Human Remains, which at the time was the long-awaited debut album from Hell, who obviously were pretty much one of the most obscure bands to be a part of the new wave or British heavy metal movement, and at least from their formation in 1982, and of course 83 with their the Save Us From Those Who Will Save Us 7-inch, again from 1983, which was been the only thing I ever really listened to from Hell. And again, this is a band I've known about for years, and I've got friends who raved about Human Remains when this was first released, and even when it came to their next release, which would be from 2013. But at the time, I didn't really get into this record until just recently, and I can't believe it, because again, I've listened to that 7-inch, at least a downloaded copy, because there's no way I would go and buy the Save Us From Those Who Would Save Us 7-inch unless it was bootlegged, because of the originals go for, oh my god, tons and tons of money. You might as well pay an arm and a leg for it. Or literally, you might as well go to find your doctor or whatever, do surgery just to remove your fucking body parts just to give to a person just so you can have at least a copy of that 7-inch. That's the only way, and I don't want to. It's just, I know it's been remastered, I think. I believe it has been. I know, there are, because right now I only own a single disc copy of Human Remains, which I've shown in one of my collection update videos. But there's at least, I think, a 2-disc copy of this one, where the second disc is actually remastered material from the original demos and stuff from at least the 80s, from at least 82 to at least 86. And I'll get into at least some of the background story. It will be a brief rundown. But yeah, and I don't really own that right now. I might upgrade at some point, but I'm just really happy they actually have a copy of Human Remains, because I'm going to get into my thoughts on Human Remains. I'm going to get into my thoughts. This is So, for those who might be familiar with Hell, you might know some story about Hell. You probably know the bullet points for why it took so long for Hell to really release their very first record, and why it took so long especially for them to basically finally actually able to record their first full-length record and release it in 2011. 30 years past, at least, obviously 30 years since the formation of, or close to 30 years since the formation of Hell in 1982, which, to get into that, Hell was formed by Dave Holliday, who had been coming off the heels from his original band Race Against Time, and basically getting together with at least 3 of the members that were from the band Parallax, which, if you're not familiar with Parallax, they are the band that released that great White Lightning EP from 1980, which of course featured the track White Lightning, which, if you know story about that one, that was one of the songs that Metallica thought about covering for the Garage Days Revisited EP in 87, the first one that would be a way to introduce Jason Newsted into Metallica since the passing of Cliff Burton. They almost thought about doing White Lightning, but apparently I guess Lars didn't feel like doing it. I think it would have been badass if they did it, because it would have been great. But then again, look where we got with Hell right now. So basically, Hell was just basically a project, or just a overall formation between Race Against Time and Parallax. And that was from 1982 to at least 87. And again, this band, for some reason, from their original formation, could not get a good record deal. These guys could never get a record deal, not even with Neat, which is surprising given the bands that Neat Records had at this period, with Satan, Courtney Act, which I think Hell would have been perfectly fitting within that sort of category, with bands like Satan and Artillery and that, just the more heavier aspects, let alone Venom. But somehow they just couldn't get a good record deal. And by the time of 86, they actually got signed to, of course, funny, I would say this might be one of the most interesting aspects of this when it comes to any label to actually signing this band, and that was Mausoleum. Now, I just mentioned you 3 bands that I obviously, there's not really many bands on the Mausoleum label that ever would have, even though I love some of the bands, you know, like Killer, Crossfire, Cutty Sark, God dang, this is like what made, I also dig Mad Axeman, I dig the Wolf record. You know, there's some really, there is some cool stuff that's on Mausoleum, even Wildfire, another one too I can mention, but not a whole lot of them can really measure up to the caliber of, like, let's say a Satan or a Venom, or even at times, let alone Artillery. You know, nothing can measure up to that. And so to kind of see a label like that to actually go and take a chance on signing Hell, it's like, whoa. And I think if everything had went through, obviously we're going to get to it, yes. If everything had went through, Hell probably would have been the most unique band on the Mausoleum label that probably would have had a record that would have been very much close to like a Merciful Fate or a Satan record or a Venom, whatever. You know, they would have been, or a Witchfinder General. They just would have been Mausoleum's very crowning achievement of a band. Probably would have got them out of the wreck maybe, because of this would have been one of those like, whoa, have you heard this record? There's this one record from this band called Hell. It's probably called Plague and Fire. Right now we might as well hypothetically say that, let's say if everything had went through, probably would have been titled Plague and Fire. You heard this record from these guys? Let's find it. I've heard it's so good. I've listened. Apparently it's pretty much this label's own like Merciful Fate or their Venom or their Satan. We gotta, you know, be search out for this record. I got this magazine. The reviews are something that it sounds like it's the most unique thing on the label. It sounds like it's gonna be fucking badass. However, that's only in Fantasyland. That would ever be what I just went through. That's only in Fantasyland because of. By the time that Hell was beginning to record their album, and at least in 1986, the label obviously was going bankrupt. They basically had to close down because of bankruptcy. That's why they couldn't release the Killer live album and everything, because 1986 was basically the worst year for the label. They weren't making, for some reason, I don't know what happened much, but apparently, I guess they blew so much money maybe. Which is odd, but they must have blew through money, and it's not enough to fund any of the releases for any records, and so therefore, because of the unfortunate events that happened with Mausoleum at this period, they obviously couldn't continue on with recording the album. I think there's only whatever we got from, was it the Plague and Fire demo from 86? That's probably why I hypothetically would have, let's say, in our little fantasy land for this tale here, if this had been come true, I think the full length now would have been titled Plague and Fire. So whatever we got of the demo might have been was what was recorded, and they couldn't record anything else, and everything just ended up falling apart for Hell. I mean, pretty much Kev Bauer ended up pretty much subsequently quit the band. Again, he was briefly replaced by, let me find some, I need to get this, god damn it. It's a fucking reason I'm trying to read the thing. Here we go, finally I had to get around, I'm trying to read the next thing here, here we go again. He was briefly replaced by Sean Kelly, though Hell split up soon afterward, and that was probably by at least 87. Obviously by this point, because of the Go to Dave Holliday's page, which is where it's becoming a really good point in the story here. On January 29th, 1987, David George Holliday, who at the time was 30 years old, had committed suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning. I guess from what I've heard, he was going through a lot of depression issues. Probably what really kind of made the depression even soar up even further was probably because of because of that the deal with Mausoleum just all of a sudden falling through the floor, because Mausoleum had to they went bankrupt. They had to close down doors, and so they couldn't. So I think that really kind of ruined the magic there, and obviously I think it really kind of put Dave Holiday, I think, even further into depression. It's kind of sucks to know that the guy was going through a lot of depression and everything. It's never good to really hear about somebody who like that, like with Wendy Williams or the Plasmatics. There's just so much of these kind of stories, and I think it sucks that wasn't even another one I could even bring up, even like Soundgarden with Chris Cornell and all them, and that's just it's always a bummer. So that pretty much set everything back for Hell, and obviously, since Dave Holiday was pretty much the sole founding member of Hell, obviously nobody, it couldn't continue. So Hell was put on the back burner, and that would be at least until 2008. They were at least so for a long time these guys were just split up until 2008. When Andy Sneap, who right now we'll all know on who Andy Sneap is at this point, we all know who he is now, but at this point, not a whole lot of people probably knew much about Andy Sneap, other than if you were those that at least might have, let's say, listened to the band he had at least in the late 80s. That would have been the British band Sabbath, not, to be confused with the Japanese one, but he does make a really good play in this story, too, is because before Dave Holiday had committed suicide, he actually was training, at this point, a pretty young Andy Sneap. And that was one of the main building points, one of the main reasons, focal reasons, for why Andy Sneap wanted to revive Hell. So he pretty much got most of the original members together, that being... Again, Kev Bauer, Tim Bowler, and Tony Speakman together. However, the newest member to the band, at least this would be by 2010, because I don't know what was the vocalist. Let me look up real quick. I guess it was a guy named Morgan Walkler. I guess that's a guy from Sabbath. Again, I'm not too familiar with the British Sabbath, other than maybe a couple of songs here and there that I've heard that are all great. Again, great stuff. British thrash metal band. But look up real quick. This guy. Let me see what albums he would have sang on. One of the first two, I guess. History of a Time to Come and Dreamweaver. He was on, and he was part of the band Skyclad, which I think was. I know it's got Satan connections. I think for Skyclad, just going through here, yeah, Steve Ramsey, Graham English was, of course, the two there. It was their band, again, after the many attempts of trying to get, like, Pariah and everything together, changing the name, from Satan to Blind Fury, and then Satan, and then back to Pariah, and shit like, and all that. But, obviously, that wasn't working out too well. I guess he left the band, and then, of course, finally... coming to play in 2010 is Kev Bauer's oldest or youngest. Let me look up real quick. Looking up real quick. It just says he's the brother. Kev Bauer's brother, David Bauer, who pretty much would become the permanent vocalist for Hell, at least from 2010 to 2018. So, finally... inking a really good deal with Nuclear Blast, obviously because of Andy Sneap having good ties with Nuclear Blast. We are here at least on May 13th of 2011. We see what would right now pretty much became obviously a dream come true for these guys. Finally the debut full-length album from Hell, that being Human Remains. After years from putting these songs, which had originally at times just been demoed, are finally been properly recorded and finally released through an actual record label, and just for the rest of the world to finally hear, which they obviously would have been happy if it had been true in at least 1986. So, here it is. So, for of course, Human Remains, we at least, technically there's 11 tracks here, but it's actually 10 full songs with at least one opening, very grandiose intro. But, and again, with these 11 tracks, all clocks in at the length of 1 hour and 6 minutes. And of course, these 11 tracks of course, beginning with Overture, themes from Death Squad, On Earth as it is in Hell, Plague and Fire, The Oppressors, Blasphemy on the Master, Let Battle Commence, The Devil's Deadly Weapon, The Quest, Macbeth, and of course, Save Us from Those Who Would Save Us, and then finally ending with No Martyr's Cage. So there it is, folks. There's your 11 songs, at least 10 songs with one grandiose intro and overture, themes from Death Squad, and there it is. I can't believe it took me this long to really listen to this record. I can't believe it took me this long to secure a copy of Human Remains, to finally give this album, I think, the most respect I should have given this album. I wish I should have given this the respect that it deserves. Because my God, from the first time I put this disc into my CD player, I was like, oh yeah, this is really freaking good. I mean, again, I've said already at the beginning of this video that the only thing I actually listened to from Hell was the Save Us from Those Who Would Save Us 7-inch from 1983. Again, one of the most sought-out collector's items of the new wave or British heavy metal movement era of the early 80s and everything. And just that classic era that everybody seems to really love to their heart, and it's just one of those hard sought-out collector's items. And again, just is great. And again, being recorded for this album, I mean, come on, you can't. To me, it's the cherry on top for me with this album, but God damn, there's so many good songs on this one. I get just from that very grandiose intro that we get with Overture, parentheses, themes from Death Squad. We then are just given the very first real taste of this album, especially for, it almost sounds like it's giving you the signs of what to finally get. It's giving you every bit of the plate that it probably gave you on your table. It just slammed it onto the table like, this is it, and it's everything you probably would ever want on a metal record. Everything is on this plate, and it's just from there, again, from On Earth as It Is in Hell to, of course, No Martyr's Cage. This is easily, oh my God, I think of any sort of newer or at least recent release I've ever bought this year. And I mean, it's not a brand new release, but I mean of just new stuff that I'm just new to right now. This is one of my favorite discoveries. I can't get over how it took me this long to finally listen to this album. This is such a really great freaking record. And yes, NastyMetalProductions production is all over the place, but it doesn't take away the fact that the overall riffing and the performances and just the overall songwriting and the riffs on this album, oh my God, yes, at times I do get a huge Merciful Fate feeling from this record, but at the same, I mean, you could say that Hell and Merciful Fate were roughly around the same period anyways, as that Merciful Fate actually got a legit record deal, whereas Hell were almost so close to getting it. They did get it. They were close to it. It just said, by the time they got the deal, all of a sudden, it's just like it's stripped away from them. It's like that they ripped it. They ripped it in half in front of them. It's like, no, not now. You ain't getting it. So it's like almost very much it's like hook, line, and sinker to these guys. I think it's very unfortunate. But here we are with the album. Again, just 10 years later, 12 years later, what a fucking great record that this ended up being, and I can't believe it took me this long to listen to it again from guys like Aaron, again, Heavy Metal Gamer, who raved the shit out of this record and still loves this record. And so it's like, my God. And even other people that are around me that were just so going gaga over this sound, it's like, boy, Why did it take me so long? There's some, again, just to go through some other really good freaking tracks. I mean, Plague and Fire is fantastic. The Oppressor's great. Blasphemy and the Master's fucking great. I also love The Devil's Deadly Weapon, which is actually the longest song on the album. This one clocks in, at the length of 10 minutes and 14 seconds. But this is such a great, very, very epic sounding song. And there's definitely some synths going on, a lot of synth effects that's going on through the sound. I mean, the sound it definitely has a very proggy vibe going on, very much similar to what you got from like Merciful Fate, especially on like the Melissa and the Nuns, what is referred to as the Nuns Have No Fun EP, and of course, Don't Break the Oath. There's so many, and many other sort of the In the Shadows, or even Time, or Into the Unknown. You get a lot of that. It's just, there's definitely plenty of that Merciful Fate kind of qualities to this album. But I also get at times here and there a little bit of Satan aspects as well to them, like Court in the Act and stuff. And again, probably at this point in time, I think Hell and Satan were neck and neck at really coming up with the most really unique, interesting albums at this period. It's like, again, did great fucking stuff. And it just I was really more into Satan at this period than I was into Hell. Even though, again, I got in heavily into like that 7-inch. And it didn't, for some reason, I didn't really go out and actually find a copy or looking for a copy of Human Remains. But there's so many other great songs. But again, to kind of stay on The Devil's Deadly Weapon, this one is definitely not nearly as fast, but it's got a lot of those same kind of qualities. It's more melodic, but it just has a more grandiose feel. It's very almost anthemic, and it just sounds so. It just sounds so freaking ungodly at times. It's like, when again, it plays around. It's like with the compositions and the timing. It's like it changes here and there. It's why I kind of throw a lot of the progressive word around, because it's got its proggy aspects, and it's just so great. Again, just straight up classic new wave or British heavy metal riffing and stuff on some of these songs. I think one of my other favorite songs off this one is Macbeth, because I was just listening to this album just much more earlier before recording it, and this is one of those that always kind of just is like blows my mind every freaking time, because of, again, just the different riff changes here and there, and it never really sticks with one riff. It always changes. It's usually one killer one after the other. It's like, Jesus Christ, this is freaking great. But then, of course, going into the re-recorded version of Save Us From Those Who Would Save Us, which is a little bit different, because it opens up with more like a little intro, very much. Obviously, it kind of gives you a big idea of what the themes for the song is and everything. Because, again, the satanic themes, and obviously the themes about warning you about or stuff that goes on within the Vatican and everything, yada, yada, yada. But when it actually goes in the actual song, it's just great. It's a great song to begin with, and it's one of my absolute favorite songs from Hell. It really is one of my favorite ones. But again, that's mostly because I've heard the original 7-inch version, then I've actually heard the version that was re-recorded for Human Remains here. I mean, most of these songs were re-recorded, but Save Us From Those Who Would Save Us was actually released as a 7-inch record instead of just some tape or whatever that was passed around as, let's say, at like the shows or something, just to buy and support the band, But it's just a really good song to begin with, and I think that they pulled off a really good version of this one. Though it's probably not nearly as great as the original, because again, I just have so much sentiments over the original version. But it's still a great track nonetheless, and I think it's perfect within this album. It's so perfect. Finally, it ends with No Martyr's Cage, and I think it's just a great freaking ending to the album. There's just so many good songs on this one, so many great riffs. I would say that David Bower just does a great job performing these songs. Yes, he's a little bit different, and if you've heard David Bower, he's done here and there, did some work with Saxon on the Battering Ram album from 2015. He did great work on at least providing to at least 2 songs on that album. I'm not going to mention them, but I think you might get at least a good example of which ones they are if you've heard Battering Ram from Saxon. One of the 2 I can mention would be The Devil's Footprint. Great track nonetheless, though, off of that one. Again, it's Andy Sneap also producing it. But God damn it. Of course, Andy Sneap is fantastic on this record. He really is. You could tell this was really a passion project for Andy Sneap. This was a passion project, and he put his heart and soul into this one. I feel like he really put his heart into it. And I think it really comes, you really can get that. You feel the heart that's in these songs. And it just sounds so great, and I love it. Really, especially when it comes to a lot of the more recent reunion kind of new wave or British heavy metal movement kind of albums, you know, from that era of those kind of bands. Human Remains, I think, kind of ranks up there as some of the top best of the resurgence of the new wave or British heavy metal and those bands that came from that movement. I think it kind of ranks up there. It was such a solid record from beginning to end. I mean, every time I put this one on, it always kind of blows my mind. It's like, what a great freaking record this is. This really, just one of my, it's really turned into one of my favorite modern metal records of this period. What a great album. And it's just crazy that it almost early into the newest decade that it finally took me time, you know, it took me this long to actually find a copy and listen to Human Remains. So it's just crazy. But again, I love this record now, and it's fantastic. And I've spent, at least a few or several months now with this one, and oh god, it just blows my mind every single time, and I don't think I'll ever get tired of listening to Human Remains, even for the length that this album is at. You know, I mean, 1 hour and 6 minutes? But this is 1 hour and 6 minutes that I'll gladly at least go through again and again as I talk about a journey. It's this fantastic album from beginning to end. What a great metal record, and just a lot of great stuff on here. My personal favorites again: On Earth as It Is in Hell, The Oppressors, Blasphemy of the Master, The Devil's Deadly Weapon, Macbeth, and of course Save Us From Those Who Would Save Us, and No Martyr's Cage. I think is a great ending to the album. Those are some of my personal favorites off this one, but there's so many great stuff on here. There's some other good ones too. Plague and Fire is fucking great too. Let Battle Commence, The Quest. Those are other really good songs. But it's just, I think the ones I just mentioned are just some of my personal favorites, especially like Macbeth, and oh my god, it's just the riffing and the changes in different riffs in this song. It goes from each different one, they're all killer, and what a just perfectly written metal song. I just love it from beginning to end. It just reminds me of some of the greatness of like Merciful Fate, and oh my god, good stuff. So there it is, folks. There's my overall opinions on Human Remains, and it's a fantastic record. And at this point, you know, it's reached its 10th anniversary, and that would have been last year. It reached its 10th anniversary, but we're pretty much already past its 12th anniversary. So 12 years to obviously one of the best reunion albums of any sort of decade. What a good album. And if you've never listened to Human Remains from Hell, I recommend you checking this album out. I think it's worth a listen if you just like classic, sort of that classic new wave of British heavy metal style. It's a great album. Or at least stuff if you love like Merciful Fate, if you love King Diamond, you love Satan, you love at least those bands that really have a really interesting, almost very proggy aspect to their metal. It's just good, very technical at times, but not without being too technical. It's perfect stuff. I love it. So after this album, again, it did great for these guys. It really kind of really gave them a much more bigger boost in popularity because they were already kind of considered one of those kind of cult following kind of bands, like one of those where it's like, all right, and like almost spoken in hush words, you know, it's like, oh yeah, hell, you need to check these guys out. If you can find their demos and stuff, maybe or comps, whatever, could check them out. They're freaking great. Especially probably alongside, I'll be recommending you like Race Against Time, which Race Against Time stuff has already been reissued to like High Roller Records. So all that stuff has at least been reissued. And because of this sound, it's probably even sparked even more interest in wanting to check out the demo stuff. So by 2013, they of course would be Curse and Chapter, which would be the second release, and at this point the final release from Hell. Because of obviously, I think because of Andy Sneap really kind of put more time into producing stuff for like Saxon, Accept Still, Because again, by the time he was working on what would be Human Remains for Hell, I think he was also, again, where he worked on what was basically also the comeback album for Accept. That had been Blood of the Nations from 2010. And he definitely put some effort in that. And by the same year, funny thing is, by the same year of Curse and Chapter, he was also producing, actually, it had been Sacrifice from Saxon and Stalingrad from Accept. So he was already doing 2 records, and pretty much by 2018 to 2017, it was pretty much it. Because of he was already now being more obligated to Judas Priest for Firepower, and then of course Saxon, Thunderbolt, and then of course the year prior he was even like where he worked on the Rise of Chaos from Accept. And these days, obviously by then there was probably no time put into like re-record or recording any new material this time, any more new material for Hell. So obviously they had to put it onto they had to basically put the band back to rest in a way. They had to put it to rest. I think it's unfortunate because of I've yet to listen to Curse and Chapter. I need to find a copy so I can listen to it. I've heard some mixed feelings about that one, but I still think it's still probably gonna be a really good album nonetheless, because I really enjoyed Human Remains. This is a really fucking great record, really good album. But it's just unfortunate that again they had to put the band back to rest, the name to rest, whatever, and not continue on but at the same time, at least this is the furthest they've went with that. At least the Hell name has went. It's at least good enough that they were able to go this far, again, getting 2 full-length albums out of it. So in a way, it was a good enough ride for this band. Just great stuff to begin with. But we at least are left with 2 good albums, and Andy Sneap has just been putting more focus in taking over Judas Priest in a way, kind of filling in the spot for Glenn Tipton. So it's all great enough. And he's still producing stuff for Accept, Sax, and so on. And of course, I think at this point, it's been working on the newest recordings, the newest material for the new Judas Priest. And that's all. Burping there. But I'm going to end it anyways. I'm done. This was a really good record, and I recommend the hell, no pun intended, out of Human Remains. It's a really good album. So that's all I can say. If you've heard Human Remains from Hell, if you have any sort of thoughts, whether they be positive or negative, you can leave them in the comment section below. So with that, I hope all of you enjoyed. This is Harry Thrasher saying I'm out, and I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.